Aikwe, Neknomalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. And today I will be talking about my review of Stephen Graham Jones's My Heart is a Chainsaw. I feel like it's been a minute since I filmed. This is also new lipstick. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a little outside my comfort zone, but it matches that pretty nicely. As well as that. And this book was a little out of my comfort zone, so I think it fits. First off, thank you to Saga for sending me an advanced reader's copy. This book is out now. This is a late review because I only just finished it this month, but this did come out in August. So, yeah. And I feel like I have to do this disclaimer every time because there are people out there who still believe this, but Stephen Graham Jones is an Indigenous author. He is part of the Blackfoot Nation, I believe. Fact check that. And I am Yurok, which is here on the west north coast of California. Indigenous nations, peoples, and tribes are not monolithic. We have our own experiences, teachings, and lessons, and cultures. We are not monolithic. We may have similar experiences or similar teachings, but we are all individuals, even to the point where a family within the same tribe will do things differently than each other. So please bear that in mind. Also, please bear in mind that I am just one Indigenous reviewer. Do not take my review as your token review for all Indigenous reviewers. I will have other Indigenous reviewers of this book, reviews of this book down in the description down below. Please check them out. So, My Heart is a Chainsaw follows Jade Daniels, who is the slasher chick in her small town. So everyone more considers her the horror chick. She is not all horror. She is slasher specifically. But she is about to graduate high school and has an encyclopedic knowledge of slasher movies. And within her small town, it's starting to get gentrified. Across the Indian Lake, mansions are being built. And on the lake itself, yachts are replacing canoes. And Jade, with her encyclopedic knowledge of slasher films, has been noticing some signs that a slasher is within their midst. And she feels she's the only one to stop it or encourage it, depending on her mood. But she feels she's definitely the only one that can help the final girl defeat the slasher, particularly after no one believes her. I rated this a 2.5. I have read Stephen Graham, this is my third Stephen Graham Jones book. I absolutely enjoyed The Only Good Indians last year. I thought it was really creepy. That's one thing with Stephen Graham Jones, there's not a strong sense of who's good or bad. His characters are morally gray, which I tend to appreciate. It makes them more realistic. Basically, Elkhead Woman is who I ended up rooting for in The Only Good Indians. I've also read Mapping the Interior, and I feel like I have to read that one again. It's a relatively small book, but something with that writing and this one in particular, there was pieces of it that felt choppy. Like I had to read multiple paragraphs over and over because I wasn't sure how we got to that point. To be fair though, this one had some things going against it, like before I even started reading it. I've been in a reading slump since June and have been trying to crawl myself out of it. So also, I am not the biggest slasher fan. I'm not a big horror movie fan in general. I've been slowly getting into horror books and find that I can handle visual descriptions better than I can audio paired with visual graphics. I just can't I can't handle horror. I can't handle horror movies at all. So that there was a disconnect with, just because I didn't know a lot of the references that were coming from this book. But don't get me wrong, it was interesting. The amount of slasher knowledge is very interesting in this. Part of the problems I've had with it, the first half of the book is fairly slow. It wasn't until about halfway that I started picking up the pace. It took me about a month to get through the first half, and I've heard that people DNF the inept it earlier than that, or like just about that point, but about halfway it does start picking up a bit. In terms of Jade Daniels, again, from the books I've read so far from Stephen Graham Jones, his characters tend to be morally gray, and I feel like Jade was no different in terms of there was things that I questioned why she was doing some of the things at the same time. She was a hard character, and she was kind of a hard character to connect with. I have a hard time connecting with teens, I found, in most of these books, because I feel like they're over dramatic. Though I feel like a teen for you. I'm sure I was just as dramatic, if not more, during my teen years, and maybe there's that disconnect because I am no longer a teen. I'm 30 now, so I don't know. So there was that element to it, but at the same time, there was something about Jade that really reminded me of my high school self, particularly her alternative style choice. She was constantly dyeing her hair, which I couldn't do in high school. I didn't start doing that till after college. I don't now, but I got that streak out of me. There was an element to it that was like, it was Jade versus everybody else. And that I've connected with because no one understood her. No one, like, it was her against the world. And I felt that. I feel like a lot of teenagers feel that way, particularly in high school, when there are cliques and people either are there for you or not. I did have some friends in high school, so that wasn't too bad, but I was definitely like the goth chick in high school. I'm still very much goth in my heart, but yeah, it was definitely that connected me to her. Jade is also native, but one thing that someone had pointed out, that I believe Erin from Erin's Library had pointed out, that I really appreciate and have to agree with, was that yes, Jade is native, but that doesn't help her in any way. Her Indianness is just there. It doesn't help her deal with a slasher. It doesn't help her help the final girl at all. If anything, it kind of goes against her at times because people think that there's something wrong with her there because of statistics in Native families. So yeah, that was an element that was like, it was nice, the fact that she was just casually Native. And I was perfectly fine with that. I kind of liked that that wasn't in the spotlight at all. It was just something I could relate to. So that was appreciative. But other than that, I didn't connect with really anybody else. We follow Jade's perspective throughout this whole thing. And there was a sense of not trusting the narration. There are content warnings for graphic depictions of death and injury. I believe death of an animal. Was it death of an animal? No. Graphic depictions of death and injury, suicide attempts, suicide ideation, by mention of abuse and rape. So yeah, so just be wary of that going in. Also know that it is a horror. So there may be, yes, death of an animal, that's part of it. Yeah, graphic depictions of not only death and injury, but gore and blood. That was part of this that was like a little odd to me, and that's what made me question the narration reliability, was because when something happened, we'd miss the action and just see the result, or just hear about the resulting blood and gore. And it felt very casual, like almost too casual. Just like, oh yeah, that's a dead body, and this is how it's decomped, and this is the parts that are missing. And it was just like, oh okay. The whole time I questioned if it was all in her head because she wanted a slasher to happen so bad in her small town. So yeah, I don't know. I'm ultimately unsure how I feel about this book. It was interesting. I think one thing that I really did enjoy about that, I don't know if everyone can take away from it, but particularly at one point, Jade says that she cannot be a final girl because final girls are pure. And really, I was able to relate that to dances or ceremonies here locally, because this is a bit of a spoiler, but Jade was sexually assaulted, and she talks about how because of that she can't be a final girl, which I don't know the rules of being final girls, but I know that within some families, or depending on who's hosting ceremonies here locally, if a girl is no longer a virgin, she cannot participate within the ceremonies, which really sucks if something like sexual assault has happened, because the men are able to join the ceremony. So it's a constant conflict within our communities here of if a girl can still participate in ceremony and in this, of a sense, place of prayer and healing. She should be able to when something was taken away from her that ultimately was not given. When her assaulter can has been within the ceremony. So it's something that we've been trying to figure out how to, it's a constant struggle and trying to figure out how we can manage that. Some families are being a little bit more looser because ultimately the idea of virgin is really a colonial aspect, but because religion has, different religions have ultimately combined with some of the ceremonies that are happening around here, and ultimately some of the families, there's that aspect of you have to be a virgin in order to do so, when really before other religions influenced their ceremonies, it was as long as you weren't married or had kids. So yeah, that's a constant struggle within our communities to try to figure out, but I thought it was interesting that Jade brings it up as I can't be a final girl. Like I said, I don't know if anybody else will, but it was an interesting perspective. And I wish that was almost talked about more. Like she kind of goes through it, but not in the healthiest way, I don't think. There's a lot of things that I feel like were kind of left open-ended. I didn't quite expect everything to tie neatly at the end, but I felt like there was too many loose strands ultimately. So ultimately I gave this a 2.5. I still hope that you, please be aware, these are just my own opinions. Like I said, I'm not very much into horror. I'm slowly getting into horror books. So there's a lot that it that I feel like I'm still figuring out what I do and don't like about Stephen Graham Jones's writing. But I highly do suggest that you pick it up, particularly if you're into horror or slasher movies, I'm sure, or books. However, as ultimately the horror aspect, I think is really creepy and great. It's just everything else that I would like. I don't know. It's me figuring it out ultimately. So I do hope to read more from Stephen Graham Jones. Yeah, he is now like the epitome of Indigenous Gothic horror. So, but yeah, ultimately, I'm not upset that I didn't read it. I'm in fact happy that I was able to finish it despite how long it took me. If you've read this, let me know what your thoughts were down in the description down below. Please, no spoilers. And otherwise, if you have gotten this far, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Hit the like button if you have yet to do so already. Be sure to subscribe and click the little bell icon to get notified when I post more content. And I will see you in the next video very soon. Cheerio.